Roll for Crit is made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you and our patrons on our Patreon page.
You can become a patron for just $1 a month at patreon.com/rollforcrit.
Greetings, terraformers, and welcome to this Roll for Crit review of Cutterland. In this game, you'll be taking these cards and you'll be cutting them up into pieces, trying to match up different terrains, creatures, or other bonuses in order to make the most attractive land.
Each player is going to have their own hand of a few of these cards. The number will differ slightly depending on player count. And on your turn, you will take, yes, an actual pair of scissors, and though it may pain you to do so, you will cut this card up into different pieces. Now, you have to, of course, follow the grid, so to speak. It is separated into squares, and you can't just cut a square in half, for instance. You have to keep those pieces together. But other than that, you can cut it into different shapes and sizes however you'd like. It's going to either be into 3 or 4 different pieces, again, depending on player count. Once you have done this, you will lay those pieces out on the table, and starting with the player to your left, players will draft, and one at a time, choose one of those pieces that they like, and they will bring it in, and it will be added to their personal land. And then once everyone has their piece, they are going to arrange it however they would like. So as the game continues, you'll have multiple pieces and you can align them in different ways. You need to make sure that they are aligned properly. You can't have them like at a diagonal. It has to be adjacent to an existing square in your area already. But other than that, you can kind of go nuts and arrange them and rotate them in any pattern that you desire. And once this has been done a certain number of rounds, the game ends and you initiate the scoring. Before scoring begins, however, you're going to have to focus on the dragons and krakens that may or may not be in your land, because they're going to devour some other creatures. Now, dragons, they're going to devour one creature that is in their specific area. An area is any set of squares of the same terrain type that is connected. And the krakens are simply going to devour anything that is either adjacent or diagonal one square next to them. So they don't care about specific areas, they're just eating whatever's in the vicinity. This is important for scoring. You might want some of those creatures, you might not want some of them, you might want them to be devoured, but if you do or don't, you have a couple of ways to take care of that. Some pieces that you take will award you with different tokens that you can place on top of your areas at the end of the game. A tower placed on a creature, for example, will protect it from being devoured. There are also the wall/bridge pieces. You can use them for either purpose. If it's a wall, that will split up an area into 2 different areas. And if it's a bridge, that will connect 2 different areas, so it makes one larger one.
Once you've gathered all your pieces to make your land, place your bonus tokens to either wall off areas, maybe protect some things with towers, and then let your creatures feast, it is time to score. Now, each creature on the field will give points depending on what they are. Krakens give you 2 points for each animal they ate. They want to reward you for feeding them. Goblins give points depending on the number of goblins in their area. You really want at least 4. That's the biggest points. After that, it's a flat 2 points for every goblin beyond that in the same area. Centaurs want a large grassland to run around, so they give you points for each square of the grassland type in their area. Dragons want one other dragon with them, so for each pair of dragons in an area, and only a pair, no more, no less, will give you 7 points. Turtles are weird. They give you a point as long as they're the only one, and you get less for each additional turtle in your entire land, so not just the area. Then finally, there are frogs. Frogs are ugly. They just give you -2 points. We don't like frogs here.
Nobody wants frogs hanging out next to the dragons and goblins.
Well,
They're
no,
not
you
cool.
would like them next to the dragons because then they'll eat them.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's true. Yes, that is one thing you can use for the devouring. So this is our second game, if you don't count legacy games, that primary mechanic of it is cutting things. The one before this was Clip Cut Parks from Renegade Game Studios. That one has much more of a kind of a roll and write feel to it. This really is drafting and I guess tile placement, kind of, but instead of tiles, it is these pieces of these cards. And it's a very interesting thing to cut up those cards.
Because what happens when you cut up the card is if you're cutting up, you get last pick. So it becomes much more interesting. It's not always like, oh, I have these tiles and what can fit. You're like, if I really wanted that centaur, maybe I'm going to cut it so it's its own tile. There's nothing else with it. So other players could be like, oh, I'm going to get that tile that has more stuff on it, or maybe like pieces. But I'm like, I know Will wants that centaur. Am I willing to just take that one centaur square and give up some of the other pieces?
Yeah, it's all about trying to make the thing you really want on your card less attractive to other players. And that definitely can be more complicated if you add more people into the mix, because you want to keep an eye on their personal lands and figure out, like you said, what they want or don't want. And it's like, oh, I know maybe there's a really good thing, but I'm going to put like 2 frogs in that same piece that I cut out.
Always those frogs.
Yeah. Or like maybe if it's not your turn, maybe someone puts out a frog thinking it'll be bad, but oh, I have a kraken in place. So yeah, I'll take that frog. I'll just put it next to the kraken. It'll eat it. And that's actually really good for me. So there's a lot of fun when you're the one waiting for someone else to do the cutting, and a lot of strategy and sometimes pressure trying to decide how to cut. And I think that's also really what makes the game so interesting, is that because everybody is going to be cutting stuff in a different way, even though those cards might be the same at the different tables of people playing this game, it's always going to be very different, because I mean, I don't know how many exact combinations there are of how you could cut these things in different patterns, but I think there's a lot. Like, there's a lot of different possibilities in terms of how the games could actually play out.
It definitely brings an interesting twist to most drafting games I've played. A lot of times, because it's not something you destroy, it's usually we know what the good card is or the bad one. Because you create the areas, it becomes a much more interesting prospect, because you then have to look at the game state. It's not just I pick the good card next. You have to think, what do other people want? How can I make something either more attractive to them or less attractive to them? How can I punish them? If, for example, they want goblins, I'm going to throw a dragon in the same area with it, so it's going to eat one of their goblins, so the focus on that now. It's a lot more mind games. Crits and misses for Cutterland.
Crits. The game takes the familiar mechanic of drafting and puts a different kind of a spin on it, in that you are cutting the pieces into different shapes and sizes of your choosing, so you aren't always going to be able to predict what is strong or weak for yourself or other players.
It is extremely enjoyable to cut up these cards and see everyone's reactions when you lay them out on the table, and people wondering, what in the world what was that person thinking?
Because it's entirely up to the players, the size and shape and makeup of the pieces that you are drafting, no 2 games will ever be the same. Even playing with the same group and playing with the same cards, it's very unlikely you'll have the same options.
Because the cards are unique with patterns of terrains and monsters before you even get a chance to cut them. Each round's going to feel unique and have an interesting experience in choosing which tiles you pick, let alone each game you play with different player counts. Misses. Comparatively speaking, this would be more along the lines of a roll and write versus a game like a Legacy where you destroy components. And unlike many of those roll and writes where you have a huge pad of paper that we'd be shocked that you finished or went through unless you really love that game, this one, because people start with multiple cards per game, we think you could go through the entire box within a few sessions.
With the amount of cards included, if you play exclusively with 4 players, you should get to play just about 13 games. Even compared to roll and write games, which come with similarly disposable game sheets, that doesn't provide you with much before you need to go out and buy new packs.
Our miss involving the number of play counts you can actually use this game for before you run out of components is important, because we really enjoyed this. It was really quick, but really fun to cut up these cards, and brought a lot to the drafting idea, because usually, when I think of drafting, it's picking the best card, passing it along. In this, you really have to, because you're customizing the card, so to speak, you have to think of how to make things attractive or not, or make people regret picking something even though they know that's what you want. Mm-hmm. It was really fun. And I think would be, as you said, Jonathan, when I was doing because we did it first with 2 players, and this is when we counted and did the math. I was like, well, you still get more with 2 players. You're like, yeah, but this is something I could play with the family with 4.
Yeah, it's a rough thing, and I wonder, that like one route they could have taken would have been to make them less like cards and more just paper, and probably they could have packed a lot more in there because it would have been cheaper to produce. But there's also something that's more satisfying and enjoyable about actually cutting and feeling that sturdy card piece and adding that to your area instead. So I can see why they did it, and it is now. So this game is not currently available in the U.S. where we are located.
As of recording.
Yes, as of this recording, it's scheduled to be coming out sometime in 2021. So I don't know what the U.S. prices are for, but based on what we looked up and the conversions from euros and what it's most likely going to be, it's a pretty reasonable asking price, as are those cartridge packs. So while it is a limited number compared to a lot of other games, I would say, I don't think that what they're asking for the refills, if you really do like the game, is too unreasonable.
This is, of course, assuming our calculations are correct based on the Kickstarter that they ran. So,
it was a crowdfunding thing. It wasn't strictly
crowdfunding.
Kickstarter. But yeah, so things may differ, of course, once it's available in America. But with putting that aside, like you said, it is really fun, and it's one of those things where I think that is the only other option they could have chosen, was to make it just cheaper paper. But for the mechanic of the game and what it is, it's inevitable. Like, it's just part of it that it's ultimately a disposable game. You will use it up at a point.
Regardless, whether you only get through 8 games because you only play 4 players, maybe you get some more because you have a lower player count, I think you're going to have a lot of fun. I think it makes drafting a lot more interesting when you get to actually choose the benefits or punishments, if you look at those frogs, of what the drafting items are. And I think that became a lot of fun. And then trying to figure out then how to fit all the lands together gives that classic, enjoyment of like Tetris when you try to fit pieces together. And at the end, when you find out that you got a Kraken that was able to eat off most of your toads, is going to be very rewarding. Or you were able to fence in and fort things around so your dragons work out right, or your goblins are all safe. Overall, a really great game.
Yeah, it definitely has that satisfying puzzle-like feel. And you do have this cute, I don't know, it's not anything super special to me, but the art is very colorful and it is pleasant. Like, it is a fun game to look at. It's kind of like this pixel art thing, although, which I think they're kind of going for, because like I said, those extra packs are referred to as cartridge packs, but it's not like super clear if they're really going for that in terms of the theme overall. But it's fine, just because it's such a simple game. You don't really need any of that. It's just cute. It's just cute to look at.
Also, perfectly paired with Clip Cut Parks, because this doesn't come with scissors. Not that that's not really too bad. You probably have scissors anyway, but have them together, you'll have scissors and 2 games that use them.
Yeah, that's true. Let us know. Have you had a chance to try Cutterland, or is it something that you would be looking forward to when it is released, perhaps wherever you might live? Talk to us in the comment section down below, and let us know if how you feel about cutting up game components. Does it scare you? Are you into it? You like that kind of thing? Talk to us down there. Till then, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this was a Roll for Crit review.
We want you to like and subscribe, and if you have the chance, take a look at our Patreon.
Thank you for being a friend. Subscribe to our channel and back again.
Okay.